Now we're going to move to our second presentation. So our second presenter is Randika. So she's a PhD candidate at the Massey University, and her paper looks at the unified framework for defining and measuring green banking. Her co-authors of this paper, and they're also her supervisors, Claire Matthews from the Massey University and Professor David Tribe from the Massey University. So welcome, Randika, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Randika Kapuge, and I'm a PhD student attached to Massey University. First of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to my supervisors, Claire Matthews and David Tribe, for their immense support and guidance. I'm glad to see David Tribe is here with you in person. And we would like to thank Climate and Energy Finance Group, Otago University, for accepting our paper for presentation. Before my presentation, I would like to share one of my life experiences with you all. I think these pictures would talk better than my words. These were taken in 2017 during Sri Lanka-India test match, which was cancelled due to toxic smog in Delhi, India. I was there when this was happening, and I saw how people and animals were suffering from that polluted environment. By that time, I had heard 1,000 or more times about environmental pollution. To be frank, until I've got my own experience, I couldn't realize what environmental pollution is. Back in my country, I did a lot of homework and readings to understand who's responsible and who have the power to stop such kind of pollutions. In my final analysis, I understood everyone is responsible, and there are 4 key parties who have more influential powers to stop such kind of pollutions. They are international organizations, governments, banks, and individuals. Therefore, this research is about green banking. Now we'll see, topic is a unified framework for defining and measuring green banking, evidence from United Nations Environmental Programme's Financial Initiative member banks. Now we'll see what is expected from banks towards the environment. Different practitioners and authors have highlighted banks have to play a leading role in climate change and other environmental emergencies, as well as banks have been identified as critical contributors to sustainable development goals. Not only that, banks need to be alert on environmental concerns because they need to keep their market share and competitiveness. Therefore, green banking is an upcoming and very important concept in banking industry. At very outset, I would like to say there's no standard definition for green banking. I brought Armand 2012 definition for you to have a brief idea about the concept. Green banking is a generic term, and the context associated with how environmentally friendly the bank is. Now we see relevance of green banking to banks. Many authors have highlighted that banking sector has a substantial impact on the environment, while others says the state of environment significantly impacts banking business. By looking at these views, we would say there's a mutual relationship between banks and the environment. Not only that, some authors have identified green banking as a promising business opportunity for banks. Therefore, green banking is well positioned and aligned with current needs of banking industry. However, different authors have highlighted that absence of green banking definition, as well as they pointed out there's a need to develop a definition as well as because of absence of standard definition, it has affected sustainable practices. Therefore, we see there's a need to develop a green banking definition. When we develop a definition for green banking, it should cover a wide scope. Therefore, we took the help from planetary boundaries theory. I think you might familiar with this theory. It's introduced in 2009, and it conceives of the Earth's safe operating space for humanity in the Earth system. And it consists of 9 limits as shown in this figure. In 2015, it was updated by introducing different measurements and risk zones. This is our conceptual framework for developing a green banking definition. In this conceptual framework, we consider international institutional contributions, banks practices, academic contributions, and insight from planetary boundaries theory. By synthesizing all these things, we are going to develop a definition for green banking. I'll explain our methodology in brief. We are collect data from 5 sources and 66, including 66 banks. We use content analysis method to analyze our data. We already analyzed 25 banks' websites and 30 academic papers. These are outputs. We are not limited to this text analysis. In the future, we would derive our themes. Based on the themes, we are going to develop our definition. Now, we have come to the end of first part of this research. Now we'll move on to the second part, measuring banks' green performance. Before that, we'll see what's happening in banking industry at present. I brought some research highlights for you. According to Chris and others' research, 35 global banks finance fossil fuel with $2.7 trillion since Paris Agreement, and it is increasing. As well as Portfolio Earth also have highlighted that in 2019, world largest banks invested more than $2.6 trillion, and it affects biodiversity destruction. As well as Cartel has also made a strong comment saying, behind every ecological crisis is a banker. By looking at these views, we are doubt whether banks are green at present. This is more critical to answer whether banks are green or not because problems of measuring green performance. Many international organizations and authors have highlighted that there's no standard performance measurement mechanism method to measure banks' green performance. At present, banks measure environmental performance using sustainability framework and ESG. However, even though banks use sustainability framework to measure green performance, many authors have highlighted there's many issues of applying this framework to measure green performance, such as compatibility problems as well as methodological issues. Similarly, different authors also highlighted that there are some issues of using ESG for measuring green performance, such as inconsistencies, compatibility problems, scope. Importantly, some authors argue effectiveness of applying ESG to measure green performance in the finance and accounting fields. To clear that point, we link fossil fuel funding research findings as well as plastic research findings with Thomson Reuters environmental performance scores. Thomson Reuters measure environmental performance on 100 scale and they allocate higher marks for better results. These are the top 10 banks which invest heavily on fossil fuel and plastics. However, if you look at these banks, they have earned good environmental performance measures from scores from Thomson Reuters. For example, if you take JP Morgan Chase, they are the leading fossil fuel funder and third largest plastic funding bank. However, they have earned 81.5 from Thomson Reuters environmental score. As well as if we take Bank America, they funds more than 10% of total plastic loans, as well as they are the fourth largest bank funding fossil fuel. However, they have earned 86.16 from Thomson Reuters. By looking at these figures, we are doubt whether this rating agency has considered indirect impact from banks on the environment. Because of this kind of situation, misleading ESGs have affected the sustainable investors confused, as well as this has affected market integrity and investor trust. Because of that, it's heavily affect on sustainable investments. Therefore, many authors have highlighted the importance of planetary boundaries theory for measuring green performance. By looking at this context, we see there's a need to develop a measurement mechanism for banks. To measure banks' green performance, we need to have a mechanism. Therefore, when we develop a mechanism to measure banks' green performance, it should cover both direct and indirect impact from the banks on the environment. We include both direct and indirect impact from banks on environment in our conceptual framework. This is our conceptual framework. In this conceptual framework, we use three main parts. First part covers banks' strategic and operation level green focus. And secondly, we consider banks' contributions to planet's limits. By combining these two, we can have a bank level environmental score. However, we know country level environmental status affect banking industry directly as well as indirectly, as well as we need to bring international banking difference into a same platform to compare. Therefore, we thought of taking country level environmental performance score as a part of our green banking scorecard. And to address that, we are going to take some support from Yale's EPI score. I'll provide a brief outline of Yale's EPI. Yale's EPI developed by Yale University, and it ranks 180 countries environmental performance based on environmental health and ecosystem vitality. And its EPI is a standard bearer of comparing and tracking country level environmental performance as per international policies, including sustainable development goal. These are the first part of our pillars, as well as these are the rest of the other pillars of our green banking scorecard. Now we'll explain our methodology in brief. We give equal weight and equal marks for each part of the green banking scorecard. However, when we give the pillar marks, we consider the relevance of each pillar, and based on that, we are going to allocate marks. The final score is the average of each mark of GBS. This is how we selected banks to apply our green banking scorecard. We selected 66 banks from 40 countries of the world. Already, we have applied our green banking scorecard for selected banks. According to our results, Triodos Banks has earned the highest mark, that is 83.13, and it's from Netherlands. And ICBC has earned the least marks from China. Now we have come to the end of our presentation. We have highlighted that there's a need for developing a definition, as well as a need to develop a performance measurement mechanism for banks to measure their green performance. Therefore, we proposed a green banking scorecard, which could be used to measure banks' green performance, as well as this can use as an auditing tool at bank level, national or international banking industry levels. We are collecting our rest of other data to complete our work. As we are in development stage of this paper, we highly appreciate and welcome your valuable suggestions for further development of this paper. Thank you very much for listening.
Awesome. Thank you, Randika. Very interesting paper. So now we'll have Kevin discuss your paper. Kevin, are you there?
Yeah, let me share a screen.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. So thank you very much for inviting me. Give a chance to discuss this paper. Actually, this paper is somewhat different from my style. So usually I just do the empirical research and try to find something. But this paper is try to invent something about the new measure about the green banking. So anyway, I really enjoy reading this paper. And so I just briefly talk about summarize and the strengths of this paper. So this paper, the motivation of this paper already, the presenter talked about that. But despite the growing importance of green banking, so neither standard definition about the green banking nor the standard performance measurement mechanism for the green banking performance exist. So doesn't exist. So that is a motivation. And this paper's strength and the most important contribution is this paper actually try to define the green banking and also develop and invent the new green banking scorecard to measure the banking industry green commitment from the new perspective. So if the banking scorecard can be successfully developed and invented, then I also can use that for the empirical research. Then also we can expand. You can also find new things empirically. So that will be a great contribution. So in this paper, also try to use the updated version of planetary boundary theory to broaden the green banking, the measurement scale, and also use the Yale's EPI, the Environmental Performance Index, as a key component of the green banking scorecard. So I just have a couple of comments of this paper. So one is, the first one is about the backtesting issue. So my question is, so usually when the new indicator is developed, introduced, invented, one important question is how well the new indicator reflects the reality. So my question is there any test result or evidence to confirm that the new measure really well captured the green banking activity? So there should be some other existing measurement. So your new measurement really also highly correlated or not. That kind of information may be important. So for example, also can provide some correlation or any regression results between each of the existing measure and also the new suggest indicator. So how well capture the reality? That is what my question. And another one is in this paper, the green banking index actually measured by the many various data. So many data, including the bank website, bank disclosure, or many international level research paper, especially CSR report, annual report, ESG report. So my question is, these days also media coverage also widely used. So in my paper I just presented today, I used the rep risk that actually the media coverage. So the media coverage data also widely used and also important to measure the firm's ESG practice these days. So media coverage usually it is kind of third party, not just the firm itself. So maybe a little bit different kind of things can be captured by the media coverage. So I just wondering if the data for the media coverage also incorporated in the index or not. That is my question. And if not incorporated, then why this is not covered? That is also my question. And final one is a kind of minor comment. So when I read the introduction, so many paragraphs actually describe the background information and the motivation why the green banking is important and why the new green banking performance measure is necessary. So that is very important and that should be highlighted in the introduction. But I think too many paragraphs actually cover this one. So I think the motivation and the background information in the introduction, and just try to highlight more about the main finding or main development in this case. So just the last paragraph, very briefly, the new banking measurement is introduced in the introduction. So I recommend to specify how to develop the new indicator regarding banking and why this is better or superior to existing measure in the introduction. So I think that is better. So anyway, I really enjoy reading the paper, and also I really look forward to using those indicator also in empirical research. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin, for your comments. Randika, would you like to reply to any of the comments that Kevin has suggested?
Okay, thank you very much, Kevin. It's actually, you gave me a lot of information and a lot of ideas. Thank you very much for that. In oral, I'll give some answer. Actually, this paper is more towards qualitative. It's like based on grounded theory. Actually, in that sense, until we develop and we compare with another, actually, it's very difficult to develop the correlation. Actually, this is not like accounting. This actually, we dig information from all websites and some data, as you noted, a lot of areas, but actually, until there's no specific indicator to measure green banking performance in banking industry, actually this is a new concept. That's what we are going to based on grounded theory. Based on grounded theory, and we are going to take help of planetary boundaries theory. And actually one paper from Australia, Ding and others, they have suggested some indicators to use in finance and accounting fields to materialize environmental impact to banks and finance arena. We are going to take some insights and we blend as a mesh with the banking needs. And actually this is more of a qualitative paper, and we are going to try scale our qualitative data into quantitative. That's what we give some marks and weights. And based on that, we are going to develop some indicator. Actually, the main idea is we are guiding banking sector, and then they can develop their own actually data sets. And based on these things, they can use their auditing tool at international or national level. That's actually a new indicator. It's not like more towards accounting, it's towards qualitative and grounded theory. Actually, I think about this media coverage and all these things. You open new avenue for me to think. I think I need to consider these your insights to future my work. Thank you very much. I think you might satisfy, I don't know.
Awesome. Thank you, Randika. We actually have one Q&A from our online participant. So it's Palap's question. So he said Thomson Reuters also provides controversy scores. Did you consider the controversy scores for the banks? Also, there are two types of ESG scores from Thomson Reuters, ESG score and the ESG combined score. Which one did you use in your study?
Actually, I use the primary ratio in ESG. I didn't consider these ratios. I saw they also use this, but this Thomson Reuters also, they mainly use the operational level concerns, how banks reduce electricity, like they almost consider the operational side of banks. But in my I just took this example to compare the existing level and how these scores are doing. This I have taken this from 2019 data, and I didn't took this suggested as you noted. These ratios I didn't consider. I just took this as an example. Actually, my scope is not within the Thomson Reuters, and it's broader. It's relates to planetary boundaries theory, not operational level, but it's cover the wide scope.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Randika, for your presentation. We're actually running out of time, so no more questions.